Welcome to the Ask for the Skinny podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Sharon Kasar Galia. She's a functional nutritionist and holistic health coach. Sharon, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be part of your podcast today.
I'm also looking forward. Please, Sharon, tell us more about yourself. What is your story?
Absolutely. So, I'm a functional medicine and functional nutritionist practitioner. I also have a holistic health coach background and I'm a herbalist as well. My background, Peter, stems from a nursing health science degree, which I started with. And I moved from science and started looking at Eastern medicine as a way to help me with my own health issues that I had back when I was 19. So I've been moving along the space of functional nutrition, functional medicine, and herbalism to really help empower people to improve their health and well-being, especially in navigating midlife in terms of menopause and midlife chronic comorbidities. So I work for Diabetes Victoria, in which I'm a holistic health coach and nurse for them, in which I have been in the last 17 years. And I've been working with them to reduce their risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. So the whole program is based on pre-diabetes. So we have a system in place where the Victorian government here have that funding program where people can get into the program for free and talk to health professionals like myself about ways to reduce their risk of diabetes because they may have done an AUSD risk score to see what their actual score is for the predisposition to type 2 diabetes. In my own practice, I have my own business, Embrace Nutrition and Holistic Health. I also work on cardiometabolic issues with men and women. And I also work in the gut, adrenal, thyroid, and hormonal health area. So I do a bit of that as well, Peter.
Yeah, that's very. Um, so you're covering a lot of topics, and that would be for 5 or 6 podcasts. But what
Yes.
I would like to focus on today would be pre-diabetes. How should midlifers identify that they're on their way to develop the real diabetes? What are the most common symptoms that we see in a patient or people where we are still able to reverse
Yep.
things? Uh,
Mm.
so what would you say? What should midlifers pay attention to? And where is the this point where they just need to take their diet seriously? They need to rethink their lifestyle choices if they want to avoid serious health problems.
Yeah, that's a really good question and something to really, there's a lot of fat we can chew around that, Peter. So often people in the midlife stage won't recognize that they are at risk of type 2 diabetes. The actual indication of that mainly comes from the fact that they may have had their labs done. So people, by the time they get to age 50, may, have their full blood test done and may notice that their HbA1c, which is the glycosylation of blood sugars over 3 months, might be higher than normal. They might actually see that their cholesterol levels, in particular their LDL cholesterol, which is their bad cholesterol, could be higher than what it should be. They may suddenly be told by their general practitioner or by family members or that their waist measurement may be increasing, and that's part of that metabolic syndrome. So um, often with the first symptoms of pre-diabetes, men and women will be faced with, increased hunger, increased cravings, issues with weight loss, even if they're exercising and eating in the same way that they were always eating. They could eat a certain way, in your 20s and 30s, parts of your 40s, and then all of a sudden the metabolic shift and metabolic flexibility starts to change. So they will notice that specifically. Some women, as opposed to men, will probably find that they will have the menopausal shift where their moods, it might affect their sleep and their stress levels. So stress and blood sugar goes hand in hand. They might find that their cortisol level, which is their stress level, and their blood sugar level are both sort of wreaking havoc on their health at nighttime. So there might be some disruption with their sleep. Another indicator could be gut health as well. So they might find that they have suddenly are not maybe metabolizing food as well. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, and I know here in Australia, where in Victoria, where I am, the leading, well, type 2 diabetes is quite prevalent here. There are people on the pre-diabetes side don't realize they're there until they actually have been to their doctor, maybe to go check a sore toe or, check something else. And then the doctors just said, "Oh, boy, well, while you're here, let's have a blood test or let's check your blood pressure," and find that their blood pressure is quite high. And then from a swollen toe that they stumped, they come home with a pre-diabetes diagnosis, and that can be very, very difficult for people to comprehend as well.
Okay, so I'll ask the classical questions.
Yeah,
How important is the diet in the pre-diabetes phase? Uh, can we reverse it with the right diet?
absolutely. So pre-diabetes is 100% reversible, and can be, with lifestyle interventions and diet and nutrition specifically, can be reversed. You can improve your metabolic markers. You can improve your blood sugar balance, your blood sugar levels, as well as your cholesterol levels and your liver, and everything else. So it is important to factor in nutrition as a part of a protocol to reduce your predisposition to type 2 diabetes and diabetes risk. So making sure, you know, here in Australia, we're a bit of a constipated country. And I know it's a bit like that in the US as well,
Mhm.
where we're not actually aware of our elimination. So we're eating and we're not aware of how much we should be, um, how our bowels and our stools should look. That's an important part of the whole gut, um, and also part of the elimination pathway. So, food, really good food, is so important. We have a lot of processed foods. We're eating a lot of trans fats and hydrogenated fats. We're eating a lot of foods that have a lot of, toxins in them, and fertilized foods, which are becoming, problems with obesity. They're obesinogens. So really being mindful of food intake to ensure that you're getting, good macros, being, Peter, your protein, your carbohydrates and fats, in not only in moderation, but in the right ratio that we need. Because suddenly, when metabolic flexibility starts to change as we reach midlife, um, you need to look at the way that you're eating. And also, you may need to change and fine tune a few things around your eating and your food and your meals and your meal planning. You can't have heavily processed foods, perhaps. The other problem, too, as we reach midlife, some people are also realizing it with insulin resistance. There could be some gut issues starting to happen as well. So they're not suddenly able to digest certain foods. They find that I was once able to eat this, and now I find I'm not digesting well. And they could end up with nutrient deficiencies and so forth. So it's really important, if you are pre-diabetic, is to work closely with someone who is able to steer you in a way to help you with nutrient assimilation, um, and also to give you the proper meal planning. because there's so many different diets out there that we get so misled about and can be so confusing, and there are so many different misconceptions to, like the intermittent fasting, to the keto diet, to certain other supplements and nutraceuticals and powders and things. People are not eating they're taking their foods in the form of liquids, which can exacerbate diabetes. We know that also frankenfood, so those plant-based meats that are the pretend burgers or sausages, with the chemicals that they have in them. I've seen many clients that have come to me who have ended up with type 2 diabetes as a result, who didn't have it before, as a result of eating these foods suddenly. So they're not eliminating these chemicals, and that is pushing the whole blood sugar issue and insulin resistance issue.
So there's a general consent that if you are diabetic, then that you should cut sugars and carbs. Is that a good way to go?
See, no. See, I think where the confusion is, Peter, is the carbohydrate confusion.
Mhm.
So what we do know is that if someone does have diabetes, they need to be mindful of their carbohydrates and what types of carbohydrates they're having and counting some of those. But in pre-diabetes, and what is a big problem here in Australia, I'm going to talk about, and I know in the US as well, is that we're having a lack of fiber. So
Mhm.
we should be having, like, 30 grams a day of fiber. And I think on average we're getting about 5 or 8 grams. Now, this fiber is in the form of carbohydrates. So what we tend to do is we think, okay, so we suddenly have this diagnosis of pre-diabetes. I need to cut out carbohydrates altogether because I need to cut out sugar, which is not the case. What we need to cut out is refined carbohydrates. So like your sugar, your white foods, some white pastas, some white rice, like jasmine rice, um, foods that are going to have a higher glycemic index, which means that they're going to have a higher glycemic load on our body, which means we're not going to be able to balance the blood sugars so well. And that's where the pouring of sugars start to come out into the bloodstream. So people then are cutting out not only those, but they're cutting out good quality carbohydrates like your brown rice, your quinoa, your pulses, lentils, chickpeas, kidney beans, um, all of those sorts of things. And they start cutting that portion of that roughage of fiber that we need for gut health, that we need those antioxidants from fruits and some vegetables for insulin resistance. So they start to severely, and I see this in menopause a lot as women face the challenge of weight gain, where they start to intermittent fast and then go on to severe keto diets because they're worried about the weight gain. Is that they're missing that portion of fiber from these good quality carbohydrates. And it's those good quality carbohydrates that nourish the gut, that nourish the microbiome. Like in Tanzania in Africa, they have a very good gut microbiome that's flourishing. In the US and in the Western world, we have a very barren type of microbiome. I mean, we're wiping that out in so many different ways. Not having fiber and not getting the diversity of plant foods or fiber, good quality carbohydrates that we need is a major reason for that. So I don't push anyone to go on a big fancy, diet cutting out things. I do elimination phases where they're needed for gut health. But in terms of reducing those lifestyle risk factors for type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and stroke, is that making sure that people are eating a very good, nourishing diet full of good quality carbohydrates is key to good bowel health. In Australia, we have a very high incidence of bowel cancer.
Mhm.
It is at the moment the leading cause of death. Um, is it attributed to lack of fiber? Is it attributed to genetics? Gut dysbiosis, poor gut microbiome, which is the good bacteria in the gut, possibly all of those. But we know improving fiber diet is important, given that I think in the last, I think there was a survey that men and women at the midlife are not getting the recommended daily requirement of fiber a day and missing portions of these food. I notice working with people in the diabetes program specifically and working with people in functional medicine, a lot of them don't know how to cook pulses. So they don't know how to use lentils and chickpeas and kidney beans. So I come from, my mum is Italian. So we were brought up with lentils and pulses. So I would watch her prepare them, soak them, prepare them, cook them, and use them in different meals. Not a lot of people here know how to use them. So they're often dismissed and they're not in their repertoire of eating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we touch one more topic that um, I usually talk about also concerning
Yes.
with diets or the supplements. Can we supplement the missing fiber? Is this possible, or should this fiber be out of the healthy diet?
That's such a good question, Peter. Yeah, look, I mean, I get people all the time saying, "Oh, I don't eat fiber. I take psyllium husks. Or I take Metamucil." The problem with some of these supplementary fibers and powders is that they can create a nutrient deficiency in iron and other minerals. So this is a problem. The other thing too is I've seen some really nasty Metamucil issues for people. Do you have Metamucil? Have you got, yeah, Metamucil here is a like a Benny fiber. It's fiber that's basically, if you add water to it, it's like a mucilage. It
Mhm.
starts to gel up. And when you're not drinking enough water and you're not doing all the things in terms of the other parts of your diet, then you can get really impacted by these sorts of fibers. And that's the issue with those. There are a lot of different supplements to help with improving the gut bacteria, and obviously, probiotics and prebiotics are good. But for myself, look, with the work I've done in functional medicine and functional nutrition over time, and the work I've done with reversing prediabetes and reversing type 2 diabetes in clients too, nothing is better than getting pre and probiotic foods into the gut and to really improve the motility of the gut and help improve when we're improving intestinal motility, when we're improving gut motility and gut bacteria and this beautiful garden that we need to have in our gut, we're also improving our blood sugar levels at the same time. So there's nothing better than chewing on foods and getting the production of starch in our mouth. I mean, that's the first part of the breakdown of food. And that comes with chewing the food. And that's the first part of the digestive process. That's also important for the emulsification, not only of fiber, of fat as well. Um, so chewing foods and not always looking at supplements. And I mean, we're in an industry now, the wellness industry is seeing a lot of powders and smoothies. And I mean, I just turn on my Instagram every day and I have a look at what's on there. Like, well, there's a new powder for this and a new this and a new that. And, and it's so misleading because they do say they've got added ingredients and things that they actually don't have in them. So we are ledly, we're falsely misled, in that aspect too. So we think a gummy is going to resolve all of our problems when it could be just a really nice healthy meal that we need to incorporate at lunchtime instead to balance your blood sugar levels.
So, how important is meal prepping and having the diet for the whole week ahead and knowing I'm gonna eat 2 or 3 times a day? And how important is the schedule of the meals so that you have, for example, lunch at 12 o'clock every day?
Absolutely. So everyone is different. Everyone's body clock is different, and we tend to eat it according to our circadian rhythm. So how well when we're sleeping, and if we are night shift working, we're obviously going to have a 3 a.m. meal as opposed to maybe a 3 p.m. meal when you're having a sleep at that time to go to work. Look, meal prepping is an important part for someone who isn't used to doing that and has had a recent diagnosis of pre-diabetes. It can be overwhelming and daunting to think about that because suddenly they're being told they need to change the way they're eating and they need to start meal planning and meal prepping. So buying and preparing food. So they may need to clean out their pantry and their fridges and do all the things and go shopping. Um, it is very important, though, to factor that in. So when I'm working with a client, the first thing I will tell them is clean up your kitchen if you can. Weight loss is made in the kitchen, and I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, mate. You may have. But we do know that the more we prepare foods, the more we're planning, then the better position we're in when we're sort of caught out at that time of the day when you're getting home from a rough day at work. And instead of going for processed foods or foods with high fats and refined sugars and higher cholesterol in them, is that you're actually going into the fridge and you're able to pick out something that you've pre-planned. So look, if you've got, I will say to my clients, if you've got your bases in the fridge, if you've got some cut up vegetables, if you've got some good quality protein in the fridge, if there's some bases like quinoa, rice and pulses, lentils and chickpeas, if you've got them, so you can make a Buddha bowl, you can make a goddess bowl or poke bowl, whatever you want to call them. At least like that, you're getting all of your macros there. That is so important. Um, I'm not one type that you'll see probably on your Insta or wherever that are doing so much meal planning that they're labeling every single container. Um, it if you do that, then all power to you if that works, and that's great. But I look at it like, okay, as long as my fridge is housing a lot of the food that I can easily pick out and make a good nutrient dense meal with, making sure that I have enough in there for, other people that are living in the household as well, if they're on board with you and they're also eating healthily. Um, but it is important if we're looking at the person, like, the average woman working who's going to the checkout after a hard day's work at 5:30 at night and is not sure what to cook for dinner, will usually pick the wrong thing because their prefrontal cortex, which is part of the decision making in their brain, will tell them to have that Snickers or chocolate bar at the checkout, you know, because they need to buffer all of the stress and they're hungry. Their blood sugars are low. So if they have pre-planned the food, then they would have taken that snack to work. They would have actually been organized enough to take their meals in and have enough food there for their blood sugar levels to be balanced. So if they had to drop it by the grocery store, they're not looking at, fats, sugars, and high salt foods, which they would need to buffer whatever they've been missing in the day. So look, it is important to be organized. People find it easier probably in the summertime to be a bit organized. You guys are reaching summer now, or it's summer for you guys now. So um, we tend to have a lot of salads. I mean, we had some nice weather in May, and we were still having salads and good quality protein and what have you for dinner. But now we're moved into winter. I'm finding we're going to the slower cooked foods, the more stodgy foods. So they might take a little bit longer. Your stews, your soups, but they are things that you can have for maybe a couple of days in the fridge. So if you've got your vegetables and your protein together in a stew or a soup, then that is a great way to fill up a little bit on the good quality protein, getting good fats that are in there and lots of vegetables too, because we can miss that. We miss the mark of vegetables. In terms of timing and what you said, there is some importance. We do know in the morning we should be getting a little bit more protein. We're actually becoming a bit protein deficient because we are going for a lot of snacks. We tend to be snacking on a lot of protein, what we call protein bars, that not necessarily have all of the essential amino acids in there
Mhm.
for your neurotransmitters that we make in the brain or to help balance our blood sugars. So we tend to eat a lot of snacky type foods instead of, say, a savory. Like some of my clients, I'll say, well, have some sardines and some vegetables for breakfast or something like that at 10 o'clock in the morning, because that can make a big difference to your cravings, and they're quite shocked as to say, I'd be normally having cereal or something like that at that time. I don't think I'm going to have cooked fish or fish for that matter, just even, with some vegetables. But it does make a big difference. So if we're timing our meals, you know, with a lot of clients who've become pre-diabetic, with myself, when they come to see me, they're normally people that don't eat all day long,
Mhm.
and then they come home really hungry, Peter, and they will eat all night long. So they'll eat their dinner and they'll eat while they're cooking dinner, and they'll snack on cheese and wine and um, chips and chocolate 9 p.m. until they go to bed, you know, because they're suddenly in this rest and digest state, which they should be, but they're filling themselves up on the wrong foods and eating a whole day's worth into the evening. By the time they get to bed, that's a big risk factor for type 2 diabetes there too, because that's interfering with the metabolic health and their cholesterol level.
Okay, I have a question. Is there any healthy snack, or is snacking bad altogether?
Great question. No, snacking is great if you need it.
Mhm.
So if you really feel you need a snack, so say you've had breakfast in the morning and you're at work and then you've got to the stage where it's not lunchtime yet, you need something. I always say to people, grab something. Grab something that's going to have a lot of fiber in it and protein. So make sure that you're actually, you know, creating that satiety that you need to tie you over until lunchtime. So snacking is a problem when it just becomes like you would decide to have chips or you decide to have something that's too sugary. And we can have these foods. They're called sometimes foods, or we call them party foods here, but they're not something you want to incorporate every day. But snacking can be a good way to balance our blood sugar levels, specifically at different times of a woman's menopause as well. And for men that are really challenged with changing their diet, they might find that they'll need that extra sustenance as well. And look, things like your nuts and seeds are always great. Greek yogurt. You could go for, good fats. I love hummus and seeded crackers, something like that. And I love my nuts and seeds as well. Some egg popcorn is good. Dark chocolate is really good. So
Mhm.
sometimes we just need that magnesium in there, and there are some beautiful minerals in there as well. It's a feel good too. So sometimes we're just looking for that. If I find I just want a quick snack, that's a good one to have. I think what we tend to do, Peter, is we will snack a lot on maybe too much fruit when someone has pre-diabetes. And they're like, oh, I have a pretty good diet. I don't understand why my blood sugar levels or my HbA1c is so high. And then you realize that, they're having too much fruit and they're not able to, um, you know, balance their blood sugar as well. That's causing the insulin resistance as well. So, eating some protein with that or buffering it with some good fat is always a good way. The other thing is a 3 o'clock. We tend to go through the 3 p.m. slump. So a lot of people get really tired around 3 o'clock. It's normally their cortisol levels that are dropping. And it could be that they're not sleeping so well, which can happen in the midlife as well. Um, so a good thing to do is to make sure you get some good fats at this stage. You don't want to have too much that you don't eat dinner, and people do make the mistake of probably having too much at that stage and not having a 6 o'clock meal or 7 o'clock meal. But you just want something that's got a little bit of protein and fiber in it at the same time. I say to people, make up some quiches that have got maybe some chicken, brown rice, egg in them, and other vegetables, a little chia pod or something like that. something that's just going to balance your blood sugar levels well, and actually help your gut at the same time.
Okay. There's another, let's say, Instagram trend that people eat shakes from fruit and vegetables early in the morning as a first meal. What's your take on that?
Oh, look, if you've got nervous system issues, Peter, meaning if you're a very stressed, anxious person, we know post trauma, uh, if you're a little bit dysregulated, in general, you've got some gut issues, cold, raw fruits and vegetables aren't the best bet. They can wreak havoc on your gut and thyroid. Um, Look, I if you're having them once off, they're okay. But if they're going to be part of the daily norm, like I was saying before, they're starting to replace meals and actual
Mhm.
food. For me, I find that's a concern because people are stopping eating. They're stopping the chewing, which is a big part of their digestive health and their gut health. Also, they're getting a lot of sugar in these fruit um, juices as well,
Mhm.
and they're wondering why they're predisposed with type 2 diabetes risk when they're having those. Because once again, I mean, if you were to eat the actual roughage part of the fruit, where you're getting the fiber portion of it, you're not going to eat as many fruits as what's probably going to be put into some smoothie. You're missing that. So that's going to raise the glycemic index, which means it's going to raise your blood sugar levels quite high. And that's not great for liver. It's not great for obviously pre-diabetes, and weight gain, waist measurement. A lot of kids here love those, even the bubble teas and things like that here. They'll have them after school. I mean, the guy just across there, he waits for the kids because they are coming in numbers to get these bubble teas. They love them. And we have adults that are addicted as well. Maybe kids can assimilate the sugars a little bit better, but adults will be finding themselves, at the 3 p.m. break, going downstairs from the office and going to the closest shop to get teas and things like that. Or even, different coffees, lattes, frappes, a lot of these very sugar dense drinks that, oh, I don't need to eat because I'm having these drinks. Yeah, it's quite filling. It's filling until the blood sugar levels will start to drop again. And that's the problem, is that, we know when you're having things like that, your blood sugar levels are going to increase to a certain point, but then you're going to slam right down to the floor, like you've been, I call it 10 rounds with Mike Tyson, because that's how it feels when you've hit a sugar low, is that a bus has driven you over, run you over, because you're really feeling the ramifications of that blood sugar low. We want to keep levels stable. Blood sugar levels should be stable. And when they're not, and when they start to drop heavily, we start to get headachy. We start to crave as well. The problem with these drinks that you're talking about, even if they start the day like that, is it's a bit of a vicious cycle, Peter, where people will start to crave that, and they might have another one at lunchtime and then at 3 o'clock, and then it doesn't end. It's just all day sipping on these sorts of drinks.
Okay. Before we conclude this podcast, I would like to ask you one more question.
Yes.
Is there any food that you're considering a superfood and you would recommend everyone to include in their meal or diet plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, it really depends on whether you're a vegan or vegetarian, or if you're carnivore, or whatever your choices are in terms of your diet. But look, I love pomegranates are great. We know pomegranates actually, they're high in antioxidants, resveratrol. They've got a lot of good vitamin C. Um, I consider them, beetroot, all your reds, as a source of, antioxidants. We need antioxidants to help with our blood sugar regulation, and we're not getting enough of that. So, ensuring that you're maybe adding them to salads. You're adding them into your smoothie or if you have a yogurt. The other thing is, your nuts and seeds, definitely. Flax seeds are so beneficial for gut health. We know that it actually helps with balancing blood sugar levels really well. It improves the quality of our stool. So it's really important part of the digestive system. So we don't have a lot of nuts and seeds because people think they're really high in calories, which they can be, but they're quite nutrient dense.
Hmm.
So we know including a portion of them every day. I mean, when I was growing up in my family, I mean, they would have nuts and seeds after dinner, with maybe some other fruits. So it's always a good way to get your good quality fat. Where in inflamed society, diabetes is part of inflammation. So we know that if we reduce inflammation by eating more foods that do that, reduce your inflammatory markers, like foods from your omega-3 profile, like avocado is another one. Um, we joke about avocado here, being quite expensive, avocado, mashed avocado on toast and so forth. But it is a really good way to get your fat profile. Fish is also really good. It's a difficult one though. A lot of people either don't like it because they're associating it with their childhood and maybe the smell. Um, it could be just a texture thing maybe for some people, but fish is really important because it does reduce your inflammation overall. So it actually helps with those inflammatory markers and your blood sugar levels. It helps to improve good cholesterol. So when we're improving good cholesterol and reducing our triglycerides, which is um, part of whether you've had too many refined sugars and alcohol that's caused the type 2 diabetes, we know that fish can actually lower the triglycerides, so lipid profile is improved. um, so I would consider a lot of seafood as a superfood as well. um, definitely your green leafy vegetables like rocket lettuce, which uh, I'm just trying to think of, you guys call it something else, and it's on the tip of my tongue, and I should know because I did a US course and I should know, but it's gone. Really bitter type vegetables.
Hmm.
So we know that your dandelion leaves, your mustard greens, your chard greens, um, your cruciferous vegetables, your broccoli, your collie. I mean, they're superfoods because of how the gut loves them. When we eat bitter foods, bitter endive is another one. When we eat those, the gut receptor produce a lot of juice. It loves it. It breaks down food. It helps with hydrochloric acid in the gut, helps to improve your blood sugar levels, helps to improve the metabolic markers and your lipid profile to reduce type 2 diabetes. So I'll say to my clients as, that are working with me with the diabetes program, have at least one salad a day that doesn't have iceberg in it, but there's at least it's got leafy greens like, that are dark green, you know, that have a variety and diversity of plant foods. Um, all of the other plant foods, you're not missing your quinoa, your lentils and pulses are really important. Not everybody can tolerate them if they have certain gut issues, and some people don't go for grains as a result of that. And I say to people, if that is an issue, then we need to look at your gut health in improving that. But, just being mindful of where your plant foods are coming from is so important. Um, I mean, they would be, my main ones. I have only started red meat this maybe in the last 7 months. I was only a bit of a pescatarian and eating poultry. Red meat does take a place because it's full of B12. It can be really beneficial for gut health and improving iron levels. So, if you're vegan or vegetarian, obviously you're not going to go down that pathway, and you'd have to make sure that you're getting your iron and your B12 from other sources, maybe phytoplankton or other sort of sources as well. But in increasing your omega 3s, but ensuring that you're getting good quality protein for me is a superfood, really, whether that's poultry, good quality fish, wild caught, or whether it is grass-fed meat, particularly.
Thank you very much. I would just have another question regarding the protein, and you're talking sufficient protein. Is that is one what's it called gram per ounce of body weight enough?
Yes, because I think it is because I feel too many people are having too much protein in their diet,
Mhm,
which can have an adverse reaction. And when they're having more than the daily recommended amount, they'll tend to have a lot of their urea levels start to increase in their blood, or
mhm,
they'll have some kidney issues. Their cholesterol levels starts to increase. If they're not eliminating foods properly and they're not having a bowel elimination daily, a lot of people don't know what kind of bowel movement they should be having as well. And they're not maybe they might be backed up a little bit. This is where excessive protein is going to be too acidic in the body. You
mhm.
know, well, we're not having that balance between acidity and alkalinity. That's a problem when we get to type 2 diabetes risk as well. Um, so we should be very mindful of protein and not only get it from one form, being meat only, then we should be balancing it out with other plant-based types of protein as well. Um, and not too much or too little, because then too little is we're going to crave. It's not great for moods and neurotransmitters, as I said to the brain. Also, with 3 phases, our liver goes through 3 phases of detoxification. So it does require some protein to do that. And people don't realize that we need those full amino acids in order to adequately transport toxins and bad cholesterol out of through bile and out into our stool. So it is an important part of our meal planning. We're either excessively we're over protein, we're having too much protein, or we're protein deficient. There seems to not be a balance, unfortunately,
Mhm.
for a lot of people, and that's why it takes people working in the functional medicine or functional nutrition space, or in the space of diabetic education, wellness education, um, to really help people to look at how they're improving their profile and adding the proper protein foods into the repertoire of eating, mainly.
Okay, that is great. Thank you, Sharon, for all this insight. I hope we can meet again in another podcast for
Yes.
other topics. Um, and where can our listeners and viewers reach you?
So I have a website. So my website is embraceholistichealth.com.au, Peter. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Sharon Casa Galea. And also, I am the holistic health and wellness coach, which you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as well. So, yeah, you can find me there. And I guess I can leave you some of my details as well, Peter.
Yeah,